Let me tell you something that most people won't say out loud. The people you surround yourself with are either building you or breaking you, and half the time, you don't even realize which one it is until it's too late. Not every threat in your life comes in the form of a screaming boss or a toxic ex. Some of the most dangerous people are quiet, subtle, smiling in your face while slowly draining your energy, your confidence, and your momentum. And here's the worst part. They often come disguised as friends, as family, as coworkers, as people who claim to want the best for you, but can't stand to see you actually get it. These aren't enemies. These are emotional landmines hiding in plain sight, and if you don't learn to recognize them, they will cost you your time, your peace, your growth, and your future. This isn't about being paranoid. It's about being awake. You don't need to cut everyone off, but you do need to get brutally honest about who in your life is helping you level up, and who's pulling you back down while pretending to lift you up. Today we're calling it out. The 6 dangerous types of people you must avoid, not should, must, because your environment is either a launch pad or an anchor, and every name, every face you keep close is shaping what happens next in your life. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the people who are quietly destroying your potential, and what to do about them. You know this person, we've all met them. At first, they seem harmless, maybe even kind, soft, spoken, or incredibly open. They tell you stories that make you feel like you should sympathize. They paint pictures of situations where they were the ones hurt, overlooked, or wronged. You nod, you lean in, you believe them. But somewhere along the way, the pattern begins to emerge. It's not just one bad day, or one bad boss, or one messy breakup. It's all of them. Every friend, every coworker, every family member they mention somehow ends up being toxic, abusive, unfair, or cruel. And that's when you realize this isn't about bad luck. This is a strategy. They are always the victim, always, and you've been cast in the role of savior. The constant victim is dangerous not because they're loud or aggressive, but because they're draining. They camouflage their toxicity in stories that pull you in, tap into your empathy, and before you know it, you're carrying their pain as if it were your own. And that's exactly the trap. The more you empathize, the more they offload. It's not a friendship, it's emotional labor, and you're not getting paid. Here's the thing, life is hard. Everyone goes through tough seasons, but people who take responsibility for their part in the struggle don't wear their pain like armor. They work through it, they reflect, they change, they grow. The constant victim doesn't do that. They collect grievances like trophies. They replay the same stories again and again, looking not for perspective or healing, but for validation. They don't want to move forward. They want to stay stuck, and they want you stuck with them. You'll notice they never apologize, not really. If you call them out, you'll hear things like, "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "I guess I'm just always the bad guy." They'll flip the script so fast it'll leave you doubting yourself. You might start to wonder, was I too harsh? Did I misinterpret? Am I the problem? That's how they keep you close, confused, off balance, and emotionally entangled. And it gets worse. The more time you spend around this kind of person, the more their mindset starts to rub off on you. You begin lowering your expectations of others. You start becoming suspicious, bitter, guarded. You start telling your own stories with a little more blame, a little less ownership. That's the real danger. This kind of energy is contagious, and before you know it, you're not just helping a victim, you're becoming one. This is not about lacking compassion. It's about protecting your peace. You cannot save someone who's committed to staying powerless. You cannot offer perspective to someone who's addicted to blame. And most of all, you cannot thrive in an environment where every moment is a new crisis and every conversation is about how the world has done them wrong. You'll notice they don't like it when you succeed. Not really. If something good happens to you, they'll find a way to bring the conversation back to their pain. You get a promotion. They had a boss who hated them. You fall in love. They just got out of something awful. You go on vacation. They can't afford one because of how unfair life has been. Your joy is a threat because it shines a light on the choices they refuse to make. They will also isolate you, slowly, subtly. They'll suggest that other people don't really get you like they do. They'll downplay your other relationships. They'll twist what others say. Why? Because the more isolated you are, the more dependent you become on them for validation. And the moment you start pulling away, they'll lash out, not directly, not always with anger. Sometimes it's just coldness, passive, aggressive comments, withdrawal, but the message is clear: your independence is a betrayal. You'll find yourself explaining, justifying, apologizing for things you didn't even do. You'll feel guilty for setting boundaries. You'll feel exhausted after every interaction, and you'll start dreading the sound of their name on your phone. Listen to that feeling. It's telling you something your logic may still be trying to rationalize. It's telling you that this is not normal, not healthy, and definitely not sustainable. The most dangerous part is how easy it is to excuse them. You'll say, they've just been through so much, or they don't have anyone else, and that may all be true, but the question is, at what cost? Your time, your energy, your mental health, because here's the truth: being there for someone doesn't mean letting them drag you down. Being kind doesn't mean being a dumping ground. And loving someone does not mean low-key. You don't always see them coming. They're not loud. They don't shout or storm out of rooms. In fact, they seem composed, thoughtful, maybe even a little too understanding. But something feels off. You start feeling weird after conversations. You second guess your decisions. You apologize for things you never used to. And before you know it, you're walking on eggshells around someone who never actually said anything mean. That's the subtle manipulator. They don't need to yell to control you. They use silence, guilt, carefully chosen words, and timing to get exactly what they want, and leave you thinking it was your idea. They'll position themselves as the reasonable one. You'll feel like the emotional one. You bring up something that bothered you. They tilt their head, raise an eyebrow, take a breath, and say something like, "I just didn't realize you were so sensitive." Or maybe, "Wow, I thought you were different." That stings. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, but it hits deep because it plants doubt. That's their tool, self-doubt. They want you questioning your instincts so they can shape your behavior without ever asking directly. These people are experts in passive control. They won't say, "Don't go out tonight." Instead, they'll sigh and say, "I just thought we'd have time together, but it's fine." You cancel your plans, not because they told you to, but because the guilt was too much. That's the move. They chip away at your freedom while making it seem like your choice. You give up things you love. You change your schedule. You start anticipating their moods, adjusting yourself before there's even a problem. And the worst part, they'll praise you for it. They'll call you thoughtful. They'll say, "I love how you just get me." But what they really love is how easy it is to get their way without ever having to own the control. They don't like confrontation, at least not openly, but if you challenge them, you'll notice the shift. Suddenly, they become the misunderstood one. "I was just trying to help. You always take things the wrong way. You're making a big deal out of nothing." Again, it's not about yelling. It's about distortion. They reframe reality so that you seem irrational. They'll tell a story that makes you look unstable, overly emotional, dramatic, and it works, because by the time they're done explaining, you're confused. You're wondering if maybe they're right. They use your empathy as a weapon. They share just enough vulnerability to keep you close. They'll tell you about a difficult past, an old trauma, a toxic ex, and suddenly you feel like you owe them something. You think, "I can't be one more person who hurts them." And that's how they trap you. Through guilt, not force. It's all subtle. It's all carefully crafted, but it keeps you tethered. This type of person thrives in relationships where the boundaries are blurry. They hate clear limits. If you set one, they'll test it gently at first. You say you need space, they respond with a joke. "Oh, are you breaking up with me already?" You laugh it off, but they're not joking. That comment was a probe, a way to see if you'll hold the line, and if you do, they'll push harder, but always with a smile, always with just enough kindness that you question if you're overreacting. They also love to isolate you, but not in obvious ways. They might not say, "Don't hang out with your friends." Instead, they'll just consistently point out how those friends don't really understand you, how your family doesn't respect you, how they're the only one who really sees the real you. Slowly, your circle shrinks, and by the time you notice, it feels like you have nowhere else to turn. What makes this person dangerous isn't just the manipulation, it's how good they are at hiding it. Outsiders won't see the problem. To everyone else, they seem like a great partner, a caring friend, a devoted colleague. But you feel the pressure. You feel the emotional weight. You carry the constant, subtle anxiety that something is wrong, but you can't explain why. That's the point. They want it to be untraceable. They want you exhausted, not outraged. The subtle manipulator doesn't just take your time. They take your clarity. You forget what your limits are. You stop trusting your instincts. You find yourself over-explaining, over-apologizing, trying to make sure you're not misunderstood. You think, maybe if I say it the right way, they'll finally get it. But they already get it. They just don't want you to realize that. Because the second you do, the game's over. You don't even have to ask how their day was. You already know it was awful. Someone cut them off in traffic. Their boss is clueless. Their coffee order was wrong again. Their partner doesn't appreciate them, and don't even get them started on how unfair life is. The chronic complainer has mastered the art of misery, and they want company. Every day, every hour, it's something new, but it's always negative. And it's always someone else's fault. Nothing ever goes right, and if you dare to mention something good in your life, they'll find a way to rain on that too. They are addicted to dissatisfaction, and not in the venting once in a while kind of way. Everyone needs to get things off their chest now and then. That's normal. This is different. This is constant. It's a mindset. It's a world view. They are committed to finding what's wrong in every situation and making sure you hear about it. The food's too cold. The weather's too hot. The vacation wasn't long enough. The movie was boring. The meeting was a waste of time. You name it. They've got a problem with it, but here's the catch. They don't want solutions. You could lay out a step-by-step plan to fix what they're complaining about, and they'll shoot it down instantly, because if the problem goes away, so does their identity. Complaining gives them attention. It gives them something to talk about. It fills the silence. It makes them feel like the victim without ever having to do the work of change. They're not looking for resolution. They're looking for validation of their stuckness. You'll notice how they shift when you stop feeding into it. Try responding with neutrality. Say something like, "That's unfortunate." Watch how quickly they escalate. Suddenly the story gets worse, the tone more dramatic. Why? Because neutrality is a threat. If you're not emotionally investing in their complaints, they lose their grip on you. The power in complaining doesn't come from the words, it comes from the reaction. And if you don't give it, they'll either turn up the volume or move on to someone else who will. The chronic complainer thrives in environments where negativity is normalized. They love groups where gossip flows freely, where sarcasm is a default tone, where people bond over shared misery. That's their playground. That's where they shine. But put them in a room full of people who are focused, grateful, disciplined, or even just content, and they'll stick out like a sore thumb. They'll call it fake. They'll say those people are just lucky, or naive, or trying too hard. Because to the complainer, contentment is suspicious. It challenges the story they've been telling themselves for years, that life is just one long list of annoyances, and that there's no way out. They're also energy thieves. Spend enough time around one, and you'll feel it. Your mood drops, your motivation tanks. You start thinking in complaints too. You pick up the habit of scanning for what's wrong instead of what's working. That's how fast it spreads. Negativity is viral, and they are walking contagions. And the worst part is, they'll make you feel guilty if you try to pull away. They'll say, "Wow, I guess you can't handle real talk," or "I just thought you cared." But what they're really saying is, why aren't you letting me dump my garbage on you like usual? They disguise their behavior as honesty. They'll say they're just being real or telling it like it is. But real talk has purpose. It moves things forward. Complaining without action is just noise. It's unproductive. It keeps people stuck. And it convinces them that doing nothing is okay as long as they have someone to listen to the play-by-play. Eventually, your patience runs out, because being around someone who constantly focuses on what's wrong starts to make you question everything. It dulls your own sense of gratitude. It rewires your thinking. It makes you feel like optimism is naive and solutions are a waste of time, and that's dangerous because you start living smaller. You stop reaching higher. You start protecting your energy by withdrawing instead of growing. Not because you're tired, but because you've been listening to someone else's mental noise for too long. The chronic complainer doesn't want your help. They want your sympathy. They want your time. They want your attention. But they don't want to change, and as long as they stay in your life unchecked, they'll pull you into the same pit they refuse to climb out of your mid-sentence, sharing something important, maybe even vulnerable. Then it happens, they interrupt with, "That reminds me of when I..." And suddenly the conversation isn't about you anymore, it's about them again. The spotlight stealer can't help it. Or maybe they can, but they just don't want to. They need attention like it's oxygen, and the second someone else gets a little air, they suck it out of the room and make the whole thing about their story, their struggle, their opinion, their win. They turn every interaction into a stage, and you're just there to hold the mic. They don't necessarily come off as rude. In fact, they're often charismatic, animated, even likable at first. They're quick to jump into stories, quick to offer anecdotes, quick to talk about their experience. And you think, wow, they're really open. But then time passes and you start to realize you don't know how they're doing. You know everything they want you to hear. You haven't really had a conversation. You've had a performance. One with them in the lead role, and you in the background, nodding and clapping like an unpaid extra. What makes this person dangerous isn't just their need for attention. It's how they crowd out everyone else. In their world, your thoughts are a setup for their monologue. Your problems are a transition to theirs. Your achievements are something to one-up. You say, "I finally ran that 5K. They say, "Oh, I did a half marathon last year, and let me tell you." You mention a promotion, and they somehow pivot to how they trained someone who now makes more money than they do. No matter what you say, they've done more, felt it deeper, suffered harder, or somehow made it all about them. And if they haven't, they will. But here's the kicker. If you ever stop giving them that spotlight, you'll see the switch. They go from enthusiastic to cold, engaged to distant, because the spotlight isn't just their preference, it's their identity. Take it away and they don't know who they are. They'll either shut down or find someone else who will give it back. It's not about connection, it's about control. They don't want conversation, they want an audience. This person will dominate group settings too. They'll interrupt, they'll talk over people, they'll hijack the mood. You could be discussing something serious, and they'll crack a joke or pivot the topic to something they're passionate about. If someone else is getting praise, they'll subtly shift the room's attention back to their own achievements. It's subtle, it's practiced, and it works, at least until you notice it. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You realize they've never once asked a follow-up question about your life that wasn't just a lead-in to something they wanted to say. And when you confront them, if you do, they'll say something like, "I was just trying to relate," or "I thought we were sharing stories," but they weren't sharing. They were directing. They were monopolizing time and energy under the guise of connection. True connection isn't a performance, it's presence, it's listening, asking, caring. The spotlight stealer doesn't do any of that. Not unless it benefits them, not unless it buys them more airtime. Eventually, being around this person starts to wear on you. You leave conversations feeling unseen, unheard, invisible. You begin to shrink without realizing it. You stop sharing as much. You hold back your wins, your challenges, your real thoughts. Because what's the point? They're going to redirect anyway, and that silence builds resentment. You start pulling away. You tell yourself you're just busy, but really you're exhausted, not physically, mentally, because giving someone your attention over and over with nothing coming back is draining in a way few things are. This kind of person doesn't always look toxic at first. They might be fun, they might be funny, they might seem like they just have a big personality. But if every interaction leaves you feeling smaller, something's off. If your presence is always the backdrop to their spotlight, you're not in a friendship. You're in a supporting role in someone else's ego trip. And over time, that role gets harder to play because you start realizing your voice has gone quiet. Your stories have gone untold, your needs have gone unmet, not because they don't matter, but because they've been crowded out by someone who insists on being center stage every time. They smile when you succeed, but it doesn't reach their eyes. They say, "I'm so happy for you," but there's a pause before the words come out, just long enough for you to feel it. They're clapping for you on the outside while clenching their teeth on the inside. This is the jealous underminer. The person who claims to be in your corner, but keeps subtly pulling the rug out from under you. They don't attack you outright. That would be too obvious. They prefer the slow drip of doubt, the carefully placed comment, the sideways compliment that makes you question whether your win was really a win at all. This is the friend who downplays your promotion with, "Well, let's see how long it lasts." The coworker who says, "Wow, must be nice to have time for the gym," when you're finally taking care of yourself. The relative who laughs, "Don't forget where you came from," when you're trying to grow. It's always masked as humor, concern, or playfulness, but the tone never lies. There's a sting behind it, a shadow, because what they're really saying is, "Your growth threatens me." You'll notice they become extra supportive when you're struggling. Suddenly, they're full of advice, checking in, offering help. But the moment you start doing better, emotionally, financially, physically, there's a shift. The calls slow down, the energy changes. You go from being someone they cared about to someone they now have to compete with. Because to them, relationships are scoreboards. Your win feels like their loss, and instead of clapping louder, they clap softer, or stop clapping altogether. The danger with this kind of person is how convincing they are. You want to believe they care. You want to think you're imagining the tension. You start rationalizing. Maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe I came across the wrong way. But deep down, you feel it. That hesitation when you share something good, that slight dread before you give them an update. You're preparing for the comment, the look, the energy shift. That's not love. That's not support. That's emotional sabotage dressed up as friendship. And it's not just what they say to your face. The jealous underminer also works behind your back. They plant subtle doubts in other people's minds about you. Nothing direct, just questions, observations, framed in the tone of concern. "I hope she's not taking on too much. He's been really different since he got that raise." They act like they're looking out for you, but really they're softening your success in other people's eyes. They're managing your image downward, making sure no one sees you as too successful, too confident, too ahead. You might catch them mimicking you too, not in admiration, but in competition. You start a business, suddenly they're launching something. You take up something new, they pick it up too, but louder. But here's the twist. They'll copy your moves while also criticizing them. They'll say, "I just don't get the whole coaching thing, everyone's doing it," while building a coaching brand the next month. They want what you have, but they don't want to admit they admire it. So they degrade it publicly and chase it privately. What's most exhausting about this person is that they keep you in a constant state of emotional double checking. You hesitate to share good news. You over-explain your choices. You soften your wins just to make them feel comfortable. And it doesn't stop there. You start shrinking your ambition. You slow down your goals. You dilute your personality, not because you want to, but because their reaction teaches you that being fully yourself comes with a cost. That cost is their resentment, and you pay it every time you put yourself out there. This is not a hater. Haters are easy to spot. They're loud, obvious, and often irrelevant. The jealous underminer is trickier. They're inside your circle, they have access, and they use it not to build you, but to subtly chip away at your confidence over time. They say just enough to keep you second guessing. They act supportive just enough to avoid being called out. They play the role of friend while quietly resenting every step you take forward. And if you ever confront them, they'll flip it. "You're reading too much into it. Well, I can't even say anything around you anymore." They make you feel like the bad guy for noticing, like you're the insecure one, and that's the final trap. They make you question your intuition, your perception, and your progress, all while wearing the mask of support.